Cheryl Woodruff. I'm the Senior Director of Operations at the Greenwich Village Society for Historic Preservation. As some of you know, we work to preserve the architecture and the history and all that important things about Greenwich Village, the East Village, and NoHo. We do that through education, advocacy, and research. I ask you, if you are not already involved, if you're not a member, we have information over on the table where you came in. Please get involved. We need your support. I have a few thank yous. I'd like to thank St. Bridget's for hosting us this evening. And I'd love to thank our co-sponsor, Grow NYC. Grow NYC is, of course, the program that grew out of the Green Market. And they work to improve New York City's quality of life through environmental programs. They transform communities and empower all New Yorkers to secure a clean and healthy environment for future generations. So they are doing good work as well, and we're really pleased to be working with them on this program this evening. So without further ado, please let me introduce Barry, our star for the night. In 1976, he co-founded the Greenmarket program with Bob Lewis. They were both planners, and Barry as well is an architect. They proposed that the market offered two solutions. One, helping regional struggling farmers, and two, providing produce to us here in New York who were starved of such wonderful things. So he's going to talk to us a little bit about the history, and he'll talk to us a little bit about the markets in our area. So over in Union Square, St. Mark's, and Tompkins Square Park. Please join me in welcoming Barry.
Great. Thank you, Cheryl. It's great to be with you all tonight. I'm very honored to share this space and this time with you.
It's going to be a little more like.
Great. And I want to share with you the beginnings of Green Market and how we came to be in this part of the city. As some of you know, maybe all of you do, we've had a market on Tompkins Square since the mid or early 80s, and I'll tell you how that came to be. Also, the market at St. Mark's, which is, of course, the heart of historic New York City on the Stuyvesant Farm. And, of course, Union Square, which was not our first market, but was the second to be established in 1976. As was mentioned by Cheryl, Bob Lewis came to work in my very small office. There were only two of us. We were on 40th Street in Bryant Park. And we both shared, as planners, a loss of farmland in the region to suburban development. And the suburban development was spreading out Bob Moses style from Manhattan to the boroughs and beyond the boroughs to Long Island and New Jersey and Westchester and Rockland County through a massive highway system with federal funding. And this federal funding was eating up farmland, very valuable, good, nutritious farmland, good soils, and pushing the farms further away from the city. And at the same time, our sources of food were being pushed away by long-distance shipping, by truck, by rail, by container ships, so that where distant farmers in Mexico and other parts of the world might have been benefiting, our local farmers were losing. Judith Spector, my wife, and I just returned yesterday from Paris, where we've been spending 4 weeks. And while we were there, we were visiting a neighborhood we had been to before and saw this poster. And I want to show it to you. So, Green Market spreading, it's now in Paris. And what's interesting, what this is reflecting, is that, as you know, Paris is a hotbed of open-air markets, but virtually none of these have any farmers in them. This is why the people running this market had to adopt the word Green Market to distinguish themselves in the same way we distinguish Green Market from being a farmer's market, because anybody could hang a sign saying farmer's market in New York City in 1976, and many did. And they were not farmers markets, and the produce was not from farms in our region, and there were no farmers in those markets. So we patented the word, we put a service market on the name Greenmarket, and thought we had an exclusive on this until I returned to England, where I worked for a couple of years, and my colleague in the planning department there said, "Have you been to our new Greenmarket?" And I thought, how did he steal a term from us when I realized I stole it from them? Because Greenmarket is a generic word in London or in England, and it means a plant market as opposed to a produce market, which we are. So anyway, I think it's fascinating, and what this poster says on here to distinguish it, it said that in collaboration with, I can't remember, maybe youth members, with La Rouche qui dit oui, who say yes, and the joyous band de producteurs des fruits et légumes de saison beau et bon. And it's on Place du Marché des Enfants Rouges, which is a very ancient old market, and it says it's la fête de la gourmandise et des producteurs, so that those who love food and those who produce it meet together at Greenmarket, 2 words, in the Marais district of Paris. So it was wonderful we got there at the time the markets were open. So where did we begin? Well, if I go back to real beginnings, it began when my father bought a farm in Eastern Shore of Maryland in 1938, where he was determined in those which were still post-Depression years that this farm succeed financially, that it paid for itself, which is no mean task in a very depressed market for farmers. Now, the reason our first real market was at 59th Street and 2nd Avenue on a lot suggested by our funder of the J.M. Kaplan Fund, whose director then lived near this city-owned site and said, "Why don't you put a market near where I live?" So since you're providing us quite a bit of funding, I said, well, why not? And so we were fortunate in having as our main sponsor the Council on the Environment of New York City, which is now Grow New York City. And it was fortunate because the council was made up of 2 bodies as members. One were the head of city agencies, including the mayor. At that time was Abraham Beam, who was the co-chair of the Council on the Environment, and his other co-chair was Marion, help me, Judith. High school, right, who was the wife of the owner of Time magazine, Andrew High School. So we had 2 very strong founders of this market. The mayor, of course, gave us the support of city agencies, which was indispensable, and Marion High School gave us the background of businesses that supplied funding to the council, although I agreed when I signed a 1-page agreement with the Council on the Environment as director of the program that I would raise the money for it, and so therefore I worked hard at it since I knew this would mean it would be my salary. And so we were successful. We went to the J.M. Kaplan Fund, whose director, Jack Kaplan, the founder, Jack Kaplan, was the founder of Welch's Grape Juice, and so therefore had a connection with farming. And he was very sympathetic, at least his staff were, and his director then, Ray Rubino, and said, well, but he said, your $7,000 to do a feasibility study won't go anywhere with the city who can't manage to tie their shoes. I think you have to go out and find a nonprofit sponsor and do the program yourself. So we increased our funding request from $7,000 to $35,000. And then we went to the Kaplan Fund and they said, we'd like to give it all to you. We want you to work to get your money, and so we're only going to give you 15 and you can go out and knock on other doors, which we did. We were able to, actually they gave us 10, we were able to get 5 more, and which was a very good start. The very first grant was an $800 grant from the Fund for the City of New York, which was an organization for interested in preserving farmland. which is why we went to them. So a lot of people came in to support this concept, came in with money, came in with excitement, came in with influence, and then we had this site at 59th Street, and there couldn't have been a better choice. As you've heard the term very often, when you're doing a new project, location, location, location. And 59th Street and 2nd Avenue is a block from Bloomingdale's and a block from Alexander's. And it was at the foot of the tramway, which had not yet been built, but we knew it was coming. So it was a fenced lot, it was owned by the city, and we were able to keep the gate closed. And I don't want to get here at Union Square, but what happened after we opened that market, we got immediate attention from the press. I sent out the press releases, commercial TV networks took us as a news item. We didn't have to advertise. We were news for these people. Channel 2, Channel 5, Channel 7, that first year, they all came to us and said, what are you doing? And we were very glad to tell them. And they would come and cover the market, and that would be their good news at the end of a bad day. So that it developed excitement. Farmers would be calling the mayor's office who knew nothing about us yet. And so it took a while to get the word out. And so the choice of a good site meant immediate success. People were lined up at the gate in the morning. They piled in. The farmers were all like sergeants in front of their squads of apples and pears and corn and beets. And they were all so proud of their displays. We kept the gates closed until they were ready to welcome us to come in. And of course, people are crazy with excitement over the smell of this food, the taste of the food. And they began sharing with us their experiences. And a student came in and made a film that first year with a small budget of $250. And it was a great film, and he filmed the people in the market, and then he brought and interviewed the same people he had filmed and got them to talk about it. And each one would tell their story. One, I worked in the South, and we had food like this. I was like, I came from Sheboygan, and this is just like our farm we have here. And they all brought their personal experiences that they had in their families and their backgrounds. So it connected not only the city with the country, but the people with their heritage. And so that has a lot to do with GVSHP, that the Greenwich Village Society is involved with our history and our roots. This market is certainly involved with roots, in both a figurative and symbolic way, roots of our economy, our farm economy, and how the two are interdependent. The farms are dependent on the city, and the markets are first established. Food is brought in many different ways. The farmers in Long Island loaded wagons and horses on the flatbeds of rail that came. The trains would come into the city, and the horses and wagons got off the trains and drove to markets like Washington Market on the west side and sold directly from their wagons. Farmers would load their blueberries up along the in the Huguenot area, and they would load the berries on the trains. They had arrangements for their suppliers. The trains would come into New York, and they would unload and sell these berries fresh the same day that had come in by train from their farms not more than 60 or 70 miles away. Now, when the 59th Street Market did so well so instantly, and if we had not begun with a good site, we might have failed. So the site meant a great deal. And the cooperation of the city on giving us the city-owned site at no cost made a big difference to us. So that same summer, 1976, we got a call from the head of the Manhattan Planning Office of the New York City Planning Commission. Her name is Mitu Baxter. And she was at that time trying to rescue Union Square, which was really in the pits. Economic pits. S. Klein's had just closed. It was a major department store in this area, and it closed because the area was running down. Nobody wanted to go to Union Square. And they said, can you do something to bring us back? So Union Square was really formed in 1811 when the commissioners prepared the grid map of New York City. And this space is laid out, it actually ran down to 9th Street, but this is from 14th, and we're down to 11th Street. So it was kind of a V shape originally. I mean, X shape. But Union Place was its original name. There was no Union Square at that time. And it was called Union because it was the union of two major arteries, the Bloomingdale Road and the Albany Post Road. And they came together. The closest union was at this place. And then they veered off, one to the northwest and one to the northeast. And the square was laid out, and the surveyor came here in 1811 and worked among trees, and it was a wooded area when he laid this out. And so as it developed, the next slide will show the first steps. The first part was at grade level, and Union Square Park was not established until about 1835. The commission decided we needed a park in the square. Frederick Law Olmsted had a role in laying out this park. At the very top, the north end, you can see what's known as the Ladies' Pavilion, which is today a 1935 stone pavilion, which is really a bandstand, where the Ladies' Pavilion was really a ladies' tennis pavilion. And it had a very open plan at the grade level. And you can see the open fountain in the center. Then, just following this, the park expanded. And this is still a grade level park here. You can see the ladies' pavilion at the very far left end. And this is around 1906. And you can see how the park is laid out in this loose fashion, very accessible from the north. And you can see already that the northern end where the market is today was a parking lot. And if you look at the 1936 WPA guide for New York City, it talks about this as being a parking lot. So it had a long history going way back as a parking, although a later view, I think we'll see if it shows, there were flower sellers who sold here at this end on maybe days when parking was permitted, or they displaced the parkers. So this is the north end. Actually, this is the west side of the square, and you can see the flower sellers came in during the spring to sell the potted flowers. Now, today, and at the beginning, we had to reach out for farmers. And although the farmers generally come in with 90 to 120 miles from Manhattan, they go as far as the Finger Lakes, which is 250 miles away. And in the early years, before we established kind of boundaries, we had farmers from as far away as Delaware come in with, one farmer came in with an old school bus full of melons, piled up to this high in the school bus, and would sell them all. And he came up with his daughters who were still in bare feet and gave them dresses. These were really off the farm. And as you can see the region, our farm belt is these valleys are where the Great Valley, as it's called, is where most of the food is grown in this region. And then there's a similar area in New Jersey, and then these are surrounded by ridges, quite steep mountains on the west side, and shallower ridges on the east side, stretching into Connecticut and across the Hudson River. So when we talk about the Hudson Valley, it's not truly the Hudson Valley, it is the Great Valley, stretching from Pennsylvania up into Massachusetts, and then going along the Mohawk Valley. We also took part in visualizing the improvements to Union Square. This is my own drawing of how we might treat the southwest corner of the square. You can see where we saved the fountain. The city planning department prepared drawings, and I just emphasized more pedestrian emphasis on it, more of a larger green area than they actually produced, and a street along the west side which would be devoted almost exclusively to pedestrians with some slow driving through. That hasn't yet been accomplished, but hopefully it will. It's moving that direction over 10-year periods. I wanted to show this. This is a box from a jigsaw puzzle, but what it shows here, in addition to the canard line, so this I think is the US line, is up here, you see this green area. That's the Washington Market, not as opposed to the Washington, no, this is Washington Street Market. Downtown is the Washington Market there too. This is in the Village. And you see another canard ship moored there, but that market goes back quite far, and it's interesting, today we have a market very near here that borrows on the same neighborhood, and that was a major produce market, and it's one of the ones where horses and wagons came on boats from New Jersey across lighters and unloaded here and filled that space with wagons and horses. This is another map showing the region. I will move through this one because I've shown you the region quite well. Now this gives you an indication of what the farms are like and what we know as the black dirt area, which is some of those valleys I showed you. And this was developed by Polish farmers in the late 1800s. The soil here is referred to as muck soils, pure soils which run up to 30 feet deep and more. And so it was perfect for growing things like onions and lettuces, things that needed this deep, rich soil, not perfect for things like corn or apples, which need a different kind of landscape, but became a very productive area and was competitive with places like Texas, and these farmers grew a lot of food that served this area. And these years, this farm would have been far too large to benefit by Greenmarket, but when Stan Oshipinski came in, S&O Farms are still in Greenmarket today at Union Square. They were wholesalers, and they would even transship Texas onions through their wholesaling operation. And they grew all their onions and lettuces here and sold them wholesale to the region. And they very slowly said, well, try growing a little bit for Greenmarket. And over the years, their entire operation shifted to Greenmarket because of the price was better, and so they farmed on less land and made more money. These are some of the farmers growing on the land. You can see it in the background, very flat, level land, very rich soils, and you can see the Polish name on the shirts. That was their tradition.
What year is that?
Well, that would have been in the early 70s. We started reading about this program in '75 and putting a proposal together. This is our first team. Bob Lewis is on the left with the glasses. Lisa McLaughlin was the director of the Council on the Environment at that time. And then I'm standing on her left, and three of my children are all working. So they didn't get paid, but they worked. So it was a team. It was very much of a team and a family effort. This is the first market of 59th Street, and you can see the massive crowds that were attracted to it. We had to learn on the way things about signage. It was very important. The gates helped us keep control of crowds until we were ready to open. It was an extraordinary experience, but had we not selected a good site, we might not have gotten off the ground. And we did have opposition from the wholesale grocery interests. When they read about us, they ran headlines in their newspapers saying that we were unfair to them, that the city should not be subsidizing these farmers. And when they realized we were true farmers markets, they said, oh, no problem. Because they didn't sell any farm produce in these stores. They thought we were going to compete with them by selling the same produce. They didn't see farm produce as any threat to them at all, which is really interesting. So here are the shoppers in that 59th Street Market. You can see how jammed it is. Don Keller who's still on the market today, and this is his truck on the left in 1976. So people loved it, and they were getting food they've never eaten before. Because the two things about the farmer's market which are truly unique. One is it's fresh. and I mean really fresh. It was picked the day before, or possibly got the case of the corn that day. Whereas the food sold in the stores might be 2 weeks old. And then the second thing about it is the variety. Varieties were being grown by these farmers, which the stores never saw. So we ended up having 50 varieties of lettuce. You will not find that in any supermarket in the city. And that's because farmers would specialize and develop their own style. This is the second plan for Union Square. That was established after the subway mezzanine was built in around 1930, connecting the 3 subway lines within Union Square. So they had to connect them over the tracks, so the mezzanine roof had to rise 3 feet above the street, and that's why Union Square was raised 3 feet, and this walled area around it sets it up on a pedestal. It developed this plan, which was like the British Union Jack, and then parking all around it, so it was not great for a market, but that's what we had to work with, and we were very happy that the city planning department offered this site and managed to get all the approvals we needed from highways and from the Department of Traffic to proceed. One of the things that happened was the proposal for the Zeckendorf Towers, which we opposed, and along with, I was very active on Union Square Park Community Coalition, and we were opposed to the changes in zoning which would allow very tall buildings around Union Square, and we appeared before the City Planning Commission at their hearings, and also at that time it was before the City Council had powers. We went before the Board of Estimate to oppose the change in zoning and showed what kind of shadows would be cast by the Zeckendorf proposal. That one went ahead, but we stopped the changes around the square for proceeding. 10 FAR means a floor area ratio of 10, which meant these very large buildings casting shadows on Union Square. This one, when Union Square first opened, it was very slow. The reason the city wanted us there is because the square was going downhill. The park itself was dominated by drug sellers, and the park was a fearful place. The farmers were afraid to walk into it. Most people were. There had been one killing there during the first 3 years we were there. And you can see, this is Union Square in its first 2 years. There's practically nobody there. And we really had to put the camera behind the vegetables to show any kind of activity at all. So it's not an easy start-up. It took at least 3 years to get established and make it an operating market.
And what year was that?
This would have been 77 probably. It could have been 76, it was very early in the beginning. And all of this is off the farm, that's why it's in baskets. There's nothing wrapped in plastic in farmer's market. These are, again, shots within the market in Union Square. They are given, it was a very direct, tactile acquaintance with fruits and vegetables. People handle them. I once was in the market a few years ago and saw a couple walk by, and the man said to the woman with him, "You don't want to touch that. People's hands have been on it." So next. Again, people's hands are on it. That's what makes it such a wonderful experience. So it's all out there to be handled. You can smell it, taste it, hold it, if it's soft or hard. The farmers are willing to accept the losses all this handling takes. And of course, the people are happy to be able to take it home. This is St. Mark's, which opened, I'm not sure when, but I think in the late 70s, early 80s. It's a wonderful place to be because that space in front of St. Mark's and the Bowery is a lovely urban space, has great historic surroundings, and it's always been a successful market. And it makes a difference to have a market in a recognizable place. All the great markets in Europe are in front of cathedrals, in front of public buildings. It's these defined public places which welcome crowds. The spaces are there for happenings to happen. So the markets traditionally, over hundreds of years, the marketplaces have been established in front of important public buildings, churches, town halls, and the like. Again, this is in front of St. Mark's in the Bowery. That's a Tuesday market, which means it was today, depending if you've gotten there. And these are, again, Mary Cunnane comes to this market. She also comes to Union Square on Saturdays. I don't think she's in the market now, but because she's mainly a summer person, and she has personally been coming to the market from her very beginnings in it. She's one of the few farmers is dedicated to it. Other farmers are so busy on the farm and they're running in so many markets in the city, they hire a lot of people. Now, they hire wonderful people too. The Union Square Market has Tibetan people who work in the market who are really good at handling and selling fruit and talking to customers and getting them to develop an informed and friendly opinion about their shopping experience. Here's planning going on. The tractor's moving the other direction. The people are putting the plants in the ground. The furrows drugged by a machine and watered by a machine from the tanks and back. That's on Canane's farm too. This is one of our bakers, Dan Leader, who's from up in the Woodstock area. Very great baker. It's called Bread Alone and can be found in the farmers markets at various locations. We're down here now to Tompkins Square. And I have to tell you a little bit about how that market got established. This book is called The Pushcart War. It's written by Jean Merrill and illustrated by her friend Ronnie Silver. It's a story about a battle between pushcarts and tractor trailers and how the pushcarts won out with the aid of the community people. It was a story about scale, which is a similar battle we were facing, having the retail farmers markets during battle with the wholesale food system and succeeding in developing an alternative for people in New York City. And when we began, we were Manhattan-oriented, but now we're in all 5 boroughs, and we've also been invited and helped establish markets in the far reaches of Long Island and Sag Harbor, and in New Jersey, and near Morristown, New Jersey, Bernardsville, New Jersey, and in Austin, New York. And we've assisted these communities in establishing their own farmers markets. And Judith and I today work in a farmers market in Saugerties, New York, with a large committee of people. And that market is in its 13th year and has been quite successful and running from May or late May, early June until December. Tompkins Square had its beginnings with Ronnie Silver and Jean Merrill, who owned, and I'm not sure where they are today, whether they're living or where they live, but they owned a house on 10th Street and Avenue B, facing the park from the east. And they saw, this was back in the early 80s, I recall, that the park had real struggle on being an inviting, pleasant park to be in. And they thought having a market in the park would be a good idea. And I said, I don't think markets belong in parks, but if you can persuade Commissioner Henry Stern to go along with it, we have no objection to trying to do it. And so they got the approvals of the Park Department and Henry Stern, and we opened there. It was not enormously successful, but enough to continue, and eventually the market pulled down to the south end on 7th Street, where I believe it is today. I'm not sure the day of the week it is. Somebody here. Sundays, okay. And and it's managed all that time. It's been a success. There are well over 50 locations in the city. Some of these are up to 4 days a week at Union Square, so it amounts to over 60 markets a week. During the season, less during the winter, but some markets run year-round. The majority do. So here are some of the farmers who come in. We have fishermen, by the way, and it's interesting that this fish, Pura Vida, also sells in our market in Saugerties, New York. So they come up into the Hudson Valley to bring their fish to us in Saugerties, and they do very well. Whereas a good day from any farmer in Saugerties would be $300. Pura Vida will do $800 or $900 in sales, and which is for there is good. For New York, it's not a big number, but for Saugerties, it's a very big number. Norwich Meadows is an organic farm, great produce, the great thing is that the customer, the people of New York, get terrific choice availability. The exciting thing about shopping at a farmer's market is you shop from a farmer. So you get to know that farmer, you learn about them, where their farms are. Sometimes people will visit a farm. Sometimes they've been known at Tompkins Square to bring coffee and breakfast to the farmers who get there very early in the morning. They form bonds with them. Farmers have formed love relationships with married people in the city and vice versa. So the bond is more than food, it's affection. Here's again Norwich Meadows, organic produce. I'll read it to you if you can't read it. Artichokes to eggplants, Jamaican peppers, and a variety of other things which are visible here in the photograph. Red Jacket is from very far upstate in the Finger Lakes area. They're surrounded by major commercial development, so that their farm sits in the middle of shopping centers, and yet they've hung in there and they produce an income which helps the farmer to survive, an income to survive from Greenmarket here in New York City. And Red Jacket has spread throughout the city. The farmers market gave them entree to grocery stores, so their products now are available in supermarkets, which is a nice step. And I would be delighted if supermarkets bought so much local food, they'd put Greenmarket out of business. Because that's where the food should be available in our market stores, and it's not to the extent that it could be and should be. Of course, when the market began, it was only fruits and vegetables. Other products came in very slowly. I never thought meat would be permitted by the health department, but we had the local city health department had never dealt with farmers markets, so they really gave jurisdiction to the New York State Department of Ag and Markets, whose goal was to benefit farmers, which the health department did not have that as a goal. But since they turned over the health regulation aspect to the state, and the state wanted to help farmers, the state then said, sure, you can bring milk into the city, just handle it correctly so people don't get sick from spoiled milk. So the milk is kept cold, and it comes in glass bottles. People don't mind paying $1.50 deposit. They object to a nickel deposit for a soda, but not a $1.50 deposit for milk. Why? Because they get the $1.50 back. It's worth bringing the bottle in to get the fresh milk. And it's fun handling milk in a bottle with the cream still on top, like it used to be in the 30s when I grew up. The other thing that came on the market slowly was meat. We never thought we could handle meat, because meat requires refrigeration. And yet the farmers found ways of handling meat and keeping it refrigerated and wholesome so that people would not get sick from it, and in fact would be healthier because the meat was fresher and without added hormones and stuff that commercial these animals are deprived of those commercial drugs. They're drug-free, and therefore the people who consume this meat are drug-free and don't get things that could affect their lives or their children's lives. So I guess we're at the end of the slides. I'd be happy if any of you had any questions. I've left a lot out, but let's see if you want anything you'd like to know, or yes. Yes, please.
What do you think the future of the Greenmarkets will be going forward?
I think the future is expansion. It's the only way to go. One of the great things about the program is encourage people to farm. There's a program within the Greenmarket system which encourages new farmers. And so they help farmers through their economic needs of getting loans, of finding land, of financing capital expansion equipment. So we're playing a role to help farmers get started. And what we're finding is that the farmers that came in 1976, their children replaced their fathers, their grandchildren replaced their children. So the family farm continues as a family farm, and the children see a future in farming. So that's a good sign that Greenmarket will expand. And that, plus the fact we're getting new farmers, we're getting new immigrant farmers. Farmers are coming from other countries, are getting established in the New York region on farms for the first time. And the Greenmarket programs helps them get established. Yes. Yes.
Oh, you mentioned the truck coming from Delaware with
Yes.
cantaloupes or with melons.
Yeah. And there was
I
cantaloupe.
wish that truck would still be coming.
Yeah.
Why not? We
That's
have fresh
a great question, and I don't think we actually turned away that truck. We had another farmer through a relative in Brooklyn that came from North Carolina. He would bring something called Scuppernong grapes, which nobody in the Greenmarket program had because they were grown where he lived. I think it was called Red Springs, North Carolina. That connection was kind of tenuous because he really was a Brooklyn resident with relatives in North Carolina, but it paid for him to do it and bring him up. He was very popular, he and his wife. His name was Clearthur Slade, and he sold in our 139th Street Harlem Market. He established great friendships with the people, and they sold for a long time. Greenmarket established a region, that map I showed you. It was a biased map. In fact, the early map showed two circles, one whose center was in the Hudson Valley, 100 miles from New York, and the other which is New York City. So there were overlapping circles which favored New York State. So we were biased towards New York, and we were sponsored by the New York State Department of Agri-Markets, more than we were by New Jersey, for example. So the bias is partly institutional. It's the people who helped us get started. New York State played a major role in giving us farmer contacts. The Hudson Valley is so well known to New York. So even though we have a fairly good sizable number of people from New Jersey, most people associate Greenmarket with the Hudson Valley and the Black Dirt area. So there's no policy of excluding. One of our farmers said, I want to buy a farm in New Jersey and made oranges. And there's a good market for my apples in Florida. So I'm asking you, Greenmarket, can we do this? And I was inclined to agree with it, but we have what we call a Farmer Consumer Advisory Committee. So our rules are established in concert with this committee. They don't make the rules, but they advise the program on the rules they can live by. For example, we had a group of farmers from the Finger Lakes who grew organic produce, and beautiful produce. They would skin their onions, make all the dirt off, but their farmer wanted, it was a long distance of travel, but just his own produce, so he wanted to combine 4 or 5 farmers on one truck and drive the 250 miles. So it was put before the committee, and they said, well, I can live off my produce, they should live off theirs. It's not fair for me to have to compete with 5 farmers on one truck. And so this was debated back and forth, and so we established no co-ops. It had to be a single farmer operation. It was somewhat arbitrary, and I didn't particularly favor it. I would have said we would do it for any farm which is under 5 acres or under 5 farmers, or whether we're over 250 miles away. We had to cut some slack for people in special position, but it did not get adopted by the committee, and we didn't like to develop rules which the committee didn't support. I have to tell you, rules are a big part of the market and evolve very slowly. For example, the first year we opened up at 59th Street, farmer brought in bananas from Long Island. I said, oh, well, bananas, where do you grow these? He said, no, we had them. I said, well, I think we're gonna need some rules. You're gonna have to grow what you bring in, or it has to be purchased from a farm within 25 miles. So that became the first rule about buying produce. And what you buy can be no more than 25% of what you display. So that rule, I think, is still kind of in the books. Is that right? And so that's as far as it stretches. I think that the Delaware farmer, whose name I'm not remembering, I think he voluntarily didn't want to make the trip. And it was great while it lasted. There were a few others. So the orange connection with the new apple farmer didn't pan out. It kind of made sense to me, but we didn't do it. And so it's okay. We had to develop an identity, and I think if we become, East Coast farmers, that we had begun to say, well, what are you doing? I thought you were trying to help out regional farmers. What is your region? Why are we helping out farmers in Delaware? Don't farmers in our region need help? So that's how we began to have focus and develop our region. Yes?
Could you comment on the impact of the chefs in the farmers market?
Yes, great question. Last time I counted, there were 70 chefs shopping at Union Square. As most of you know, the Union Square Cafe, run by Danny Meyer, Danny said that he opened his restaurant because Greenmarket was there. And he did want all his seasonal produce in Greenmarket, and has continued to do so, and other chefs followed in his footsteps. And they come down, Peter Hoffman would come up from his restaurant in downtown on a bicycle with a big basket in front, a 3-wheel basket. And he came up personally as the chef and owner of his restaurant and fill this basket and take it back. He was totally devoted to local produce, and other chefs followed their lead. They knew the value of locally grown food. Another outstanding chef is at the Blue Hill, near Washington Square. Name the chef for me?
Dan Barber?
What?
Dan Barber?
Yes, Dan Barber. If you've gone to his restaurant, he has an extraordinary method of displaying his food. He brings out a piece of sculpture shaped like a tree with spikes on it. There's a little piece of fresh local produce on each spike. And the rest of the meal is that way. He's just so proud of what he can do with local food. And he's extraordinarily talented. As you know, he has his own farm up in Hudson Valley, and he's dedicated to growing food there as well. And so the connection between cooking and producing is very strong. As you saw in this French poster, that was the highlight of that market in Paris. So the wedding of chefs and producers is very important. It gave farmers credibility. It also gave the chefs credibility. And the farmers would grow for the chefs, the products they were looking for, just as they did for their customers. Farmers who first came to 135th Street in Harlem had never heard of college before. And people said, why are you college? And they said, oh, college? So they started growing them, and it turned out to be a very popular vegetable. As you know, the most popular vegetable in the past 2 years has been kale. Everything is kale, kale, kale. Including ice cream, I think, when you're children. So yeah, the connection is important. And so when you talk about expansion, New York is one of the food capitals of the world. I mean, Paris is great and wonderful, but we have some terrific chefs here and some wonderful restaurants. And it's a great struggle because rents are so high. And when people come to New York from abroad, they're looking for the good restaurants. And the guides you read will highlight where they are. And they're all over. There's some marvelous ones in Brooklyn and other parts of the city. We found the same is true in Paris. One of our favorite restaurants is a long walk from the center of the city. It's about an hour and a half walk. And we're totally tucked up and we have to go up a steep hill at the end to get there. And yet this produce is wonderful he uses, and his food is very well produced, cooked, and it's like eating on a farm. So, yes.
Barry, do you mind if I just embarrass Kathleen here? So, Kathleen Crosby is the market manager at Tompkins Square Greenmarket.
Yes.
Two others, right?
Yes.
Yep. So we had the pleasure of working with Kathleen for the last 2 falls. We put on an exhibit where we looked at the Greenmarkets history in the neighborhood and then the area's history as well. And I got to see firsthand how much work these guys do to get there. And, so Barry, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what
staff.
it's like for a grow New York City staffer when they're at the, I bet you have to go to the office and do more. But if you could talk about what they have to do
Exactly.
throughout the day, that would be
Great that you brought it up.
Yeah.
As that photograph showed, that year when my 3 children and Bob Lewis, we were the staff. Because we only had 3 markets to run. And the other thing, by the way, is we didn't even have checkbooks yet. We were working all with cash. And you talk about, the smell of money. Money smells terrible. And also, it's really hard to deal with it, all these bills. So we very soon got, and the farmers like to handle cash because they didn't have to report it to the IRS. So, but very soon we got into much more business like the county. And also, probably the first few weeks or months, maybe I formed a contract with the Council on the Environment. I became the director and I hired staff personally as a consultant who worked for me, and then we worked the staff for the program. And that remained true as long as I was director. The staff were never paid by the council, they were paid by me, and I would bill the council for their time plus overhead as a contractor would with the city. The formula used, and I think maybe still be used, as you normally charge the city 2.5 times the salary of the person you're billing for to cover overhead. And of course most of the work is in summer, so it's not a full-time job. So I generally hired people by the season, just like farmers work by the season. So it was only very slowly that the work developed, that there's work in the office as well as in the field. But most of the work was in the field. As you mentioned, the manager had to be there all day, had to be there early in the morning until late in the afternoon, make sure the place is cleaned up. We in the office had all the backup work, the biggest being publicity. Bob Lewis' main contact was with the farmers, and he brought the farmers in. Mine was with the city agencies and publicity. So I prepared the news releases, be calling people, and we had astoundingly good publicity the first 20 years. They would come to us to write articles. They wrote beautiful articles, wonderful stuff, appeared in magazines of all kinds. And the staff began working in the office to help develop this space work. We needed to produce signs at the markets. Big signs put on the fences, small signs put on the parking meters. We had to do all kinds of, we had to make arrangements with the city police department to tow illegally parked cars so the farmers can get their trucks in. And all of this had to be done by staff. And there was no easy way to define responsibility. Responsibility had to meet the challenges as we found in the field. And what do you do with the rain? What do you do with snow? Cleanup. We had to make sure the farmers cleaned up behind themselves. We had to go to the farms to make sure they were growing what they brought in. So we have full-time farm inspectors, as you know. So there's a great deal of work to make this program work. And people would say, what do you have to do? All farmers have to come in and sell. No, it isn't that easy. And, does that answer you?
Yes, that definitely
Okay,
does.
great.
Yeah.
Yes.
What do they do with all the food that's left that hasn't
Great
been
question.
sold?
City Harvest. You heard of them?
Oh, yeah.
They go around, they're not the only person, but they do go around to all the markets and pick up the unsold food and distribute it to soup kitchens. And that's a major way it's done. In the old days, by the way, the borough president, Marcus Marx, in the 1920s, beat us to the punch by putting a market just where we did, at 59th Street and 2nd Avenue. And he established, there's a big sign in his report saying farmers only. So even then, he had to worry about hustlers coming in who are not farmers. And these farmers would come in and sell during the day. And at the end of the day, a bell would be rung, and the push carts, and this book is about the push cart war, and these are people selling food that they got from farmers. At the end of the day, in the wholesale market, they'd load their carts and wheel to the other parts of the city that didn't have the benefit of farmers markets, so this produce could get distributed almost fresh the next day or day after. So it's a tradition to distribute food that way. I don't know if I've dealt with the question, but I think so. I tend to wander, so that'll bring me back.
When did the markets start going year-round?
What do they sell when you're selling year-round?
No, when did that
Oh,
start?
when they start going year-round. So as soon as we got into things like meat and dairy and cheese and products which year-round, and baked products, of course. And then, of course, there are a number of other products which store easily. Apples is obvious, apple cider, potatoes, carrots, many of the cold crops will handle well for a long period, cabbage. They store well for a long time. And onions, of course, winter squashes, and then you have eggs, butter, cheese. There's no end, and after all, our New Amsterdam was supplied by farms, some of which were within shouting distance of where we are tonight.
Comparing 1976 or so when you started and now, are there more or less farmers who want to come and be at the green markets? Are they an endangered species as far as
I'm not in a good position to answer that question. You should maybe do this session again with the current director of the market, Mike Hurwitz, who would give you a lot of great answers. For example, the last I talked to Mike is how much the farmer's making in green market, wholesale, gross income. And my recollection is something like $25 million, which is a good sizable piece of agricultural income for our region. In terms of the percentage of food sold wholesale in the system, we're less than 2%, I'm sure, but 2% is very impressive, I think, if we actually do sell. And I did a study at one time, unpublished, which looked at the foods sold at the wholesale market. I picked out 12 foods sold in the wholesale market at Hunts Point that are also sold in green market, seasonal foods, and which ones could be grown totally by green market farmers. One of which was eggplant, for example. Most eggplant is local anyway in Hunts Point. Our carrots, however, come from California, and the reason many of them come from California, two reasons. One is they're cheaper. When you go to California and buy carrots retail, they're probably going to be half the price they are here. And also, they're better. Their carrots are really sweeter, they're tender, they just grow a better crop. I think our carrots are a little strong, they're tough, they're big. The other supplier of carrots to our region is Canada. And I don't think Canada's much competition in terms of taste or variety. There are a number of products which could be supplied by local farmers. Onions is one. So yes, there's potential for wholesale growth for farms in our region if the price can be met. One of the edges that has come in recent 10 or 20 years is I call it so-called organic food, because the new federal regulations open the doors so wide to what's organic, as if the same wholesalers are back into the game with the name O on it. And so that even the organic farmers don't want to be called organic under federal regulations because they think it's kind of a hoax, so they call themselves naturally grown. And so, but on the other hand, by putting the big O on your produce, they increase the price by 50%. This is true in Paris too, by the way. In a local market where we shop, we realized we paid an awful lot for this food. Oh, it's your organic farm. That's why. And we don't know if he's organic or not, but the price is much higher. So organic is, it's like being gluten-free. That's enabled prices to go up as well. So it becomes kind of a fashion, I think, as much as a health issue, to develop a market for certain kinds of food. So the expansion possibilities depend a lot on marketing for new farmers. It's a very sophisticated business. New farmers also have to develop new ways of marketing, of contacting their markets. They have to be really computer savvy, I think, to let people know where they are, who they are, and what they grow. And there are different ways of marketing now. Judith noticed a truck coming in. We're all used to, what's the one we see a lot of in the city?
Fresh Direct. Fresh Direct.
Fresh Direct. And we saw a new one today, Amazon Direct. So they're going online and selling them by Amazon. You buy your books Amazon, you buy your produce Amazon. So the farmers who want to get into this market and have to wait, get known. It's going to be difficult. And if this wholesale market doesn't want to buy, the stores don't want to buy from them, they have to be really creative. That's why farmers markets, and by the way, Green Market is not the only farmers market in New York. There's market, what do we call our dinners? Harvest. There's Harvest Home. Is a market system. I'm trying to remember the name of the director, it may come to me, but that program, which has about at least 12 markets in the city, if not more, is directed specifically towards low-income communities. And there are other local markets in the city run by other people. So go online and look at farmers markets and see where they all are. Don't just rely on Green Market.
Well, I'd like to thank you so much for
Yeah.
taking the time to talk about the business.
It's a lot of fun.